Hi, I'm Rachel Bevilacqua, and we are on week 5 of our 8-week series. Last week we talked a little bit about thoughts, specifically the part of our thoughts that we can control, so how we respond. I had you guys look up some unhelpful thinking styles. Hopefully you connected with some of those and were able to use the skills we learned last week to help refute those a little bit and maybe redirect them to change that experience. This week we're going to talk a little bit about feelings and what we can do with those. Several weeks ago I talked to you and told you that we have no control over our feelings. So you're probably wondering, what am I supposed to do with them then if I can't control them? What's the point? Well, the point is we're trying to change our experience. And if there's those 3 parts of the experience that we talked about a few weeks ago, you can't just skip out on 1/3 of the experience. Feelings are a part of that. We talked about feelings being either emotions or physical sensations. A lot of times we might find ourselves really getting stuck in an emotion, and it might kind of fire back and forth between our automatic thoughts and our feelings. And that's a cycle that we want to try to intercept this week. So instead of shaming ourselves, judging ourselves, or trying to fight automatic thoughts or automatic emotions, one thing that we could do is acknowledge them and then work on validating and accepting them. A lot of times when I tell people that, they're just kind of like, well, that means that I'm agreeing with it, or, that means it's okay. Not necessarily. When I have a thought that I'm such a failure, or I have constant anxiety where my heart rate is elevated and my head is spinning, I'm not saying that's okay. I'm not saying we want that. If we can acknowledge it, then it gives us the power to change it. I don't know if you've ever noticed yourself fighting with your thoughts, and the more that you fight, the more that they're there. It's kind of like if I told you to stop thinking about the sun outside. Well, how do you know if you're not thinking about the sun without thinking about the sun? It's very counterproductive. So that's the same thing with feelings as it is with automatic thoughts. We want to acknowledge them. So the part of acknowledgement is identifying or labeling. What is the emotion? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it frustration? What's the physical sensation? Is it an increase in heart rate? Am I shaking? Is my head racing? Things like that. You want to identify what they are. Because once we can identify it and kind of put it on the table, it takes that power away from it. The second part is validation. So validation is not saying, it's not saying it's okay, but what it's saying is that it makes sense that I feel this way, or if it doesn't make sense, it's there, right? We're acknowledging that it's there, and we're validating that I'm gonna be okay if I have this. And once we can do that, then we can then change it. So that piece of acceptance kind of redirects the whole experience back to what can I do, which is addressing the thoughts, the response to the thoughts, and addressing the behaviors. And that whole cycle will then increase your productivity during the day, your feelings around each day and your experiences. And that's the goal of acknowledging and validating our feelings. So this next week, I want you to kind of go back to the same homework that we talked about a few weeks ago, where you did various check-ins throughout the day. I want you to set an alarm, check in about 3 times a day, and really just kind of sit with, how am I feeling right now? What's going on right now? And is this feeling influencing anything that I'm doing right now, or how I'm thinking about myself right now? And if we can get awareness around our feelings, then we can start working on this whole acknowledgement piece and then the validating. This takes a lot longer than the other things we've talked about. It's the only one that's not tangible. So it might feel a lot harder and a lot more difficult to grasp. So it might be helpful to write it down sometimes. That might be helpful, but setting alarms is probably the best way to go for right now. Next week, we're going to go more into brain functioning, so how our brain changes over time with chronic depression and anxiety, to kind of demonstrate what this whole changing the experience thing is actually doing to our brain. I'll see you then.